frameworks. And so let's start with vanilla.js, right? So this is what we were doing till today, and I hope that you saw that sometimes you're doing a lot of hustle just to do some simple task like create an element with some text and classes. You're doing a lot of things with JavaScript, and sometimes it's always annoying because you literally want to create just a simple element, but you're just doing a lot of things. And so it JavaScript sometimes is frustrating. So the advantage actually of JavaScript that it is compatible, but you still need to be careful with versions. But yeah, we will talk about that in a few moments. So yeah, about the frameworks. So because JavaScript has multiple versions, like you probably heard about ES6, ES7, ES5, etc. So that means that you need to transpile your JavaScript to one version to the older one to support all browsers. But when you're working with frameworks, you will always process your code. That means that will be compiled automatically and transpiled, so you don't really need to worry about that. So standardize the structure, so you will have basically the same structure, and you will see like a kind of the same way to do some stuff, like creating elements, like creating layouts, etc. So you're kind of standardizing stuff. You have community. You probably know that, and the main part I would say of any framework is the community. Because if you have we have a lot of frameworks. We have, like, for JavaScript, we probably somebody is joking that every minute we are getting a new framework, but we have just a few as really popular, and the reason is because if you have a huge community behind the framework, that means that you can resolve any problem, or if you spot something in the framework, that can be updated very fast. And so basically you have support. And efficiency, again, because it provides you like generalized ways to handle stuff. That means that it will be more efficient. Sometimes it will be, like, in most cases it will be more efficient than developer will write on his own the code. So so what is frameworks? It's still JavaScript, right? So basically somebody wrote a lot of JavaScript, like kind of abstractions. We have talked about that a bit. Like you creating a lot of code that will basically help others to implement stuff. And remember, we had a tiny exercise about like a library, the calculator library, where you can where you just change all of like methods, so we can actually do chaining. This is something, right? So this is like a library, but frameworks is a bit bigger, because besides the extra functionality, it actually goes to the core of the language and doing a bit of logic on that level. So basically frameworks is a bit more than just library. So we have a few popular frameworks. You probably heard about Vue.js, AngularJS, Backbone, Ember, and Meteor. So these three, you probably heard about Backbone, maybe Ember. Meteor is not that popular, but those two, they are very popular. So Vue and Angular. Sorry. With Angular, we have a bit weird story. You might heard that we have quite a few versions for Angular. We have like Angular 1.6, 1.7, 2 point something. Now Angular is 8 point something. And the problem is that on some point, Angular has jumped from one version to another and said that they are not compatible. So people who have applications on Angular 1.6, they can't just update Angular to version 7 or 8 because it's not compatible. They need just rebuild their application from scratch. So that is why Angular, on some point of time, they lost a lot of people because of that transition. So Angular initially has been created by Google, and Google still kind of developing that, but they lost a lot of trust, I would say, into that framework. And Vue.js has been created by one guy, but it became very popular. It's kind of HTML-ish style framework, but yeah, you don't need to worry about that. React is the most popular now. So React actually the most popular framework on the market now. So sorry. We have, like, to build an application, we have data and we have UI, right? And JavaScript always responsible for UI. And so basically your frameworks helping you to create UI very easily. And with frameworks, again, it depends on the framework, but with React, for example, you can actually bind data and UI and have everything kind of mixed in one place, so it's easy to manage your code. You still need to be smart with your code, but it's actually, you can isolate your kind of component. You probably heard about components, and we will talk about vocabulary for frameworks, but you isolating piece of your application into small files, let's say, where you have data and UI and everything you need for this component, like stylings, etc. So we can create our own framework, right? It's this again. We did it we did it in the with the exercise for the calculator. That was a library. Again, there is some line between frameworks and libraries, but people still confused quite often, because if you ask anyone, is React library or framework, officially on their website, they saying that React is a library, but it doesn't look like just a library. It actually, it feels like more than library. So yeah, it sometimes it might be confusing. But we already built some library, so you should know what we're talking about. About React. So dictionary. Components means that this is reusable part of the application. So you're actually creating components. We call it components to have like pieces, like building blocks for your application. So state means the storage where you for your variables, for your data, local data. So we call it state. Each component can have state or can be stateless. So it depends on the component. I'll show you a few examples, but you need to know about the state. So it's kind of, if you want to save data on the component, we have state for that. And it's not that simple, but we will talk about that. So props, this is parameters. As like in regular functions, you're passing parameters to the function, right, inside. Props works in the same way. So you pass in props into the other component, which is now all components, they are functions. So you basically pass in like parameters to your function. This is how we call what we call props. Hooks, so this is functions to access features of React. That means it's basically we have, I would say, two types of hooks. We have lifecycle hooks because React has own lifecycle and like what it does on each stage. And we have hooks with basically these are like a tools to communicate with React and like state, for example, or other stuff, or lifecycle hooks, for example. Another thing is the JSX. So JSX is JavaScript and HTML hybrid. So you're basically writing HTML, or you can say HTML-ish syntax or JavaScript-ish syntax. Again, I'll show you in a few minutes what is the valid JSX. So this is JSX is an actual language, the separate language which we use in React, within React. So lifecycle, this is what I meant. We have, this is events during the time of component exists. So you have lifecycle events like has been created, has been re-rendered or will re-render, etc. So you catch in like when I mount components, I want to do something. When I will dismount component, I want to do something. When I re-render components, I want to do something. So all these, they are lifecycle events or lifecycle hooks, depends on like, you can call both in both ways. And component hierarchy. So this is pretty much like DOM, because because you have built-in blocks for your application from components. You're building this tree like a DOM in a DOM style, where you're putting one component into another, and you build in like basically the hierarchy of that. So components. Let me actually go back here, and we will initialize the application. npx create React app, and I want to create React app here. So this is how we're creating React application, the basic, the dummy React application, the very like a skeleton for your future application. So it has create React app is basically a configuration. So you don't need to set up everything manually. You can just run the command, and that will do a basic setup. And I would say this is the main setup that you need to build an application. So yeah, create React app is the answer. So while it's installing, let's talk about this one. Sorry. So here, this is a plain JavaScript, right? So we have to render a button. We want to create an element with button, which is a button, set inner text with, for example, click me, and return button element, right? So this is how it looks in pure JavaScript. With component, so if you want to add a class, you need to add another row in your, let me just highlight it. You need to add another row to your component, to your function, and you basically just add in more stuff. And if you want to add an event listener, you want to, again, you just add in more stuff here to the function, and your function is growing, right? So that is why it is basically, it becomes very complex and very dirty. It looks just messy. So that is why with JSX, you can create component like this. You give a name to your component, but you can see, you can recognize that this is arrow function, right? This is just a regular arrow function. But because you're doing that in React, it's recognized as a component, and this is what you're creating. You're mixing JavaScript and HTML, right? So let me show you the example. Okay, great. So npm start. We need to run the server, and oh right, sorry, I need to stop. I did stop. Beautiful. Let me just it's opened in a different screen. So this is default setup, right? So they have some icon, some image, some text and link. So this is the basic structure of your React application. So all development is happening in SRC folder, right? So we have the main, so everything is starting from index.js. Here you have your basic setup, and the main component is app.js. So app.js comes from here, which is just another file, and this is the basic structure. So let me just remove everything. So I want to import React from React, and I want to remove everything. I have just hello.
Sorry, what's the app.js versus your index.js?
So index is just a root file where you can do some configuration. So you don't normally do any logic. You're not writing your code here. You're just adding a few things. If you need like routing, we will talk about that a bit later, like a global state redux, etc. But this is basically more like configuration file. It's like the top level component that you don't normally write anything here.
Okay.
And where for you, where everything is starting is the app.js. So app.js is basically the main one where you start writing your code. And let me just remove a few things because we don't need set up tests. We don't write tests for now. We don't have this. Let me just remove, I'm just removing all redundant stuff. Yeah, so here we have just React DOM, then you have React strict mode and your component, the main root component. And here you're saying where this is a second parameter. You see that render is just a function of the React DOM object. And you pass in first parameter is the component, and the second is where you want to insert it. Because in public folder, you have index.html, and this is where it will find the div with ID root and will insert the whole application inside this div. But again, when you write in your Java, when you write in React, you don't touch index.js like at all. Maybe once in a project if you need to configure something specifically, but you don't actually write in code there. So this is our app component, and we have some link somewhere. Where do we have a link? Oh, that should be fine. Refresh. Yeah, great. So you can see that we have our hello, right? And here, I'll also recommend you to install 2 plugins. For now, just one. This is React DevTools. React DevTools. Chrome. So you can install it to your Chrome. This is the one. And then you will have another tab, which is like components. And I have just one component. I have app, right? And here you can see props, which I don't have any. I don't have any state. I have nothing basically here. And yeah. So to create, let's go back to our button actually. So I will close my index here. To create my button, let's go back here. We want to have some class. We want to have some listener on click, and we want to have some text, right? So with React, let me change it to arrow function. just don't like the old syntax. So here I will create my button, right? This is regular HTML. Click me. So here we have the button, and I want to add a class. So in React we don't have classes, we have class names. Class name, and let's say, I don't know, main button, right? And maybe here I want to have some like button txt. That will be a string. So I'm creating a variable, right? And to put the variable inside HTML, let's say, I'm doing curlies, and then inside you put in your variable. So if I save, I still have click me, right? And in my compiled HTML, I have button with class main button and click me text, right? But in React, it looks like this. Another thing is that I want to add a click handler. All I'm doing is adding a prop on click, and I can add any function. So let's say click handler. So I want to have a function click handler. So that means that here I'm just creating a constant click handler, right? Just a regular function. And let's add console log, and we will have click, right? So see that you mixing your JavaScript and HTML, and that is why. So this is the language that we call JSX.
But then, if you have like a whole, I don't know, web page with a header, a footer, very complex page, would you have everything in app or
no? So that is why we have this component hierarchy, where we start creating more and more folders for components, and then we will get there. I will show you how to do that.
And so you do nothing on the HTML page, you do everything on your JS page.
In JS, in React components.
Like JSX.
Yeah, okay. JSX. Yeah. So if I go back and go to my console. Now, if I click on the button, you can see that it's registering clicks, right? So again, this is how you have event listeners. You don't write at event listener, you're not finding elements, you just mixing and working with your elements directly. So this is how you actually interacting with elements in React. Sorry. Yeah. So this is, here we have an example where we pass in props, but we will get to props and I'll show you how it works. But yeah, this is just an example. Sorry. So yeah, components, they can receive props. So you can pass props and that will be basically, and you need, all right, and the second part, so components can take props. Second thing is that each component should return something. You need to have return. So your component is a function, and that function should has return. If I remove return, it's throwing us error that nothing was returned from app, right? I need at least return null, and that will be valid one. So we returning nothing, so it's empty, but at least return null. So yeah, you always need to have return for each component. And when you change in the properties, it will automatically re-render the component. So if I have, we will talk, we have a lesson about props, etc. I will show you everything. But the basic idea is that if you change in properties, props, for the component, it will re-render automatically. So yes. Okay, so let's go to state. So state, basically you storing your data somewhere in a variable, right? So I will show you, this is a specific, we have React hooks, and with React hooks you can create initialized state, the place where you can store some data. Each component can have own state, and again, when you change the component, when you change the state, component will automatically re-render. So it's not re-rendering the whole application, it's re-rendering the component and everything that's inside this component. So if I change the state here, it will re-render this component, and if I include any other components, that will re-render all of them. So you basically, if I have a state here and change the state, that means that you will re-render the whole application, because this is a top component. That is why you will re-render the whole application. This is how state behaves. So yeah, props, you're passing you're passing parameters as in functions to a component, just like a function, and again, that will re-render components as well. So if you change the prop, that will render the component. Yeah, just like functions, you can put anything. You can specify whatever you want, and that will work. You will just pass as parameters, and you need to receive with the same key. So yeah, this is basically how it works. And sorry. You need to think, when you're creating components, you need to think about where do you want to reuse your components. So that means that you need to think what kind of properties you want to send to keep your components reusable. So the idea of these building blocks is that you can reuse your components in different places, and you don't need to repeat yourself again and again and again and again. So yeah, this is basically you can pass your components, your props to the component, and you can reuse this component. You need to think about the props that you pass to make them reusable, and with different data you can get different stuff. And again, I will show you how that works in a few moments. Okay. So React.
Can you then also, when you go to the code editor, show us practice thing of this state example?
Yeah. So I just to explain that next lesson will be just about state. So we will have a lot of practice around that. So if we're covering everything, we will cover all of that today quickly. But on Wednesday, we will have the full lesson about state. On next week, on Monday, we will have the full lesson about properties, about props. But today, we'll just quickly cover this stuff, so you will can understand what's going on and how it works.
Got it.
Yeah. So first thing is you asked about, Thomas. You asked about are we writing everything in app? So normally, you create in a folder in your SRC and call it like components. And inside components, let's create a, component. So I'm creating another folder. Like normally we use capitals for components. So user card, for example. And this is what we have there. So we have user card, and inside I will create index.js, for example, file. Another thing, when we're starting to work with our React application, I strongly recommend you to install React snippets. Where are they? This one, ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native snippets. This is you can see that it is pretty popular. It is very helpful because for me, now I created an empty file, right? Now if I type React arrow functional component, hit tab, I have the this basic structure of the component. And when you creating a component, you are giving the relevant name of that component. So for me, it is user card. So user card, right? And here you have your this is basically a function, as you can see, and you want to export default this component, user card.
Can you show again the name of the extension?
Oh yeah, sure. React Redux GraphQL ES7. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So let me just quickly call. Yeah. So now this is the basic structure, right? So if you creating a component, for example, user card, you give a name to that component, user card, the same name, and you need to export default this component. And now, let's say I want to print a lie element. That will be a lie, or maybe div, or a lie. That's fine. So we are passing props, right? So props is an object. Whatever you pass in to that component will be a part of this object, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's imagine that we have, let me remove my button, and let's create some array of usernames. Const users, and I have Alex, Bob, Jane, Adam. Yep, I think it's enough. So we have 4 users. So now here I have a username. Maybe we want to have objects actually. Let me actually quickly create mock data online Macaru. I think it's Macaru. Yeah. So my first name, last name. Let me just change name, age, location, advanced personal. First name, age. Do we have age? Should be race. Slow down. Fake company, department, cash, nature, color, basics, color, blank, boolean, crypt data. Come on, number, just number. Yeah, number. Main, I don't know, 20 to 50. And we don't need this. Maybe we want to have gender. We want to have, I don't know, 20 users. Let's have 20 users. Includes null values. No null values. Download. Maybe preview. I probably need a preview first. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm creating. Let me create. Just thinking. I will create a file db on the db.js. It's like a mock data, just to show you. Export default. That will be an array. Yeah, so I'm exporting just a dummy data. So here I can import users, from DB, from DB, right? For DB.js. So we don't need to have it here. So const users, oh sorry, I want to console log when I load my page. I want to console log my users to see do we actually have them. So let's go here, refresh, find module, perfect. Import default, what's going on? Why it doesn't work? Pum, pum, pum. Are we? Yeah, we are on the same level. Ah, right, sorry. Great. So now frames collapsed. Why it doesn't like my? Is it because of JS? Yeah, beautiful. So when you import it, you just specify in the file type as well for some reason. It should recognize JS by default, but I don't know what's going on. So now we have all our users, right? Okay, so I want to create, I have a user card. So here, because this is an array, how do we loop through the array? How do we normally do that? Anyone? JavaScript?
How do we what?
Loop through the array.
Are you talking about the?
Sorry?
Are you talking about the filter function here, or?
No, just going through. So we want to go through and return each user. So what methods in JavaScript we have to go through the array and return each item?
Can we go through the for each, for example?
So for each we can go through, but we're not returning. We have a new method for that in JavaScript.
Map?
Yep, map, exactly. So here, if you want to inject JavaScript into your HTML, you always put curlies. So now you have users.map, and you have your user, right? And I want to use my user card. So I need to import my user card, right? Because this is a separate component. So import user card and, from, and that will be components user card, right? You can see that I'm not specifying index.js because it will automatically, if you're not specifying that, it will automatically pick up index.js from that folder. So it's just shorter syntax for me. So here, I want to return user card because this is a component. So this is the syntax for the component. It's kind of a tag, HTML tag, right? But with a custom name.
Sorry, can you show again what there is in user card in the components?
Yeah, sure. So user card is just a line. Let's say user card. For now, I'm just putting the text, right?
Okay.
So now.
So are we saying that for each user, then for 20 of the 20 users, we'll add 20 lies then?
Yeah, exactly. And as you can see, we have it in the DOM. Yep.
Okay, that's powerful. Yeah.
User card. You need to remember here we have a warning. So when you use map, you need to have we have ID. You need to have a unique identifier. So here, because we are mapping and this is the top component, I want to add key and specify, for example, in my case, that should be something unique for each. So user ID will be pretty unique in our case. So now if I refresh, I don't have this warning, right? So I have 20 user cards, but we don't want to have 20 user cards. I want to pass actually data. So I want to pass, let's say, user, right? And user. So you can call it kitten, whatever. That means this is a property name as like a param name in JavaScript function. So that will be, this is what you will receive on the other side, the label you will have. So let's have kitten. And here, I want to console log props, the whole object, everything. Sorry. Let me just remove my users from here. I don't need them. So, as you can see, I have 20 times I have my kitten, because we're rendering each component separately, right? And that is why we have 20 times in our console log. So in our case, we have a kitten. We probably can think about better name, but let's.
So why is kitten the title of the object?
No, we have the object with key kitten. I can put another one.
Because it says kitten equals user. Okay.
Yeah, doggy. I don't know. Peabody. Now we have props is kitten, where we have user, and Peabody with doggy, which is Peabody, right? So it's basically you literally passing like a props. So this is props, but this is the same as params to the function.
Okay.
So you're naming them, but
and where can we see the key user ID?
Key is the reserved one, so you will not see it, because key is just for React to distinct elements on the DOM.
Okay.
If you rendering the same elements many times. So in our case, we have just user, refresh, and we have finally we have user, right? And we have ID, first name, gender, last name, and age. So let's go back to our index and think what we want to render here.
Okay, those users are coming from the db.js file, right?
Yes, yes. In our case, yes.
Which is just an object.
It's just object. It's not JSON. It's just object. It's an array of objects.
Okay.
It just like a literally like a variable. I don't know, const users equals, and then after all of that, you will have something like export default your users variable, right?
Okay.
Basically, you have an array and you export in it. This is it. Nothing smart. Okay, so we have our items. Let's think what we want to render. Let's go back to our user card and think what we want to have here. We want to have a full name, so let's have like a H4, and we want to have a full name. For now, it's just full name. We want to have probably age, like P, come on, P, age. For now, that will be 0, right? I'm just building a template. And we want to have, let's say, gender, P, gender, male for now. So this is hard-coded, right? So now we have 20 cards. Let me add some stylings. So to add stylings, I will show you the generic way to do that, but we have a smart way to do that, and I'll show you what is the difference. So here, how you normally do that, you have your component folder, right? And I want to create another file which will be I don't know, styles, or maybe user card CSS, right? And we will have some stylings. We'll have, I don't know, user card. So let's add some class, so class name, right? User card. And here, I'm just adding user card. And we will have like, I don't know, what do we want to have? What do we want to have? Width, 400 pixels, box shadow, I don't know, 0 pixels, 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGBA, 0.1, and the next one is 4 pixels, 8 pixels, and 16 pixels. RGBA 0.2. Something like that. So let's see. Right. So we have user card. We need to import our CSS. So import our CSS here, which is user card.css. We have our cards, right? We on the app level, we want to put our CSS back. Import app CSS, right? This is what we have here. We already have this file for app CSS. And for, okay, we have quite a few stylings here. I just want to, for UL, I want to set my list styling to none. I don't want to remove these dots. Why we don't? Oh, right. See, so we have div. I probably want to have UL here. Ooh, UL. So now, yeah, we have just a regular list. Beautiful. You probably can add some stylings here, like padding 1M, just to make it nicer. Yeah, so we have 20, and margin bottom 1M as well. Just quickly. Yeah, beautiful. 20 cards. So we are rendering all our cards, and you can see that we have data in my user, right? So you have first name. Here we want to have a full name. So let's say full name, and I want to put my two variables, right? I want to concatenate them. I can do in this way, like props dot first name space and props last name, right? Ooh, what's going on? Why we don't have props? Because it is inside user, right? So props dot user last name, right? So now we have our names for each. Then the same for age, right? So here we can do props dot user dot age. Now we have different age. And same with gender. Gender. Right? So now we have dynamic dynamic gender. So everything is dynamic now. Right? Sorry. So we have props. Let me close this. We're passing the whole user to our card, and then we just have the access because the whole user is inside props, and we're getting stuff from there. So here we have a few things, and that I want to talk. It's still a lot of code because you're repeating your props.user.stuff, right? So first thing that you can simplify, you can just, again, pure JavaScript. You're just destructuring first name, last name, age, and gender from props.user, right? Then you don't need to have all these prefixes everywhere, right? Still working. Yep. So we have, this is the one approach. Second approach, because we have quite like a few things that we don't use in our component, right? So we don't use, for example, ID, we don't use, we don't use just ID. Okay, fair enough. So let's imagine that we don't use gender as well. We have just full name and age. So we can actually do that in other way. Again, this is more about how to structure your code rather than just learn basically new things. Because we are passing just one user and we pass in redundant data. But we can pass user, for example, age, right? And have dot age. And we can have first name, or maybe we can pass full name. And here we can concatenate, right? As a regular variable, you can concatenate user dot first name space last name, right? So now if I save, we will get error because we don't have these two. But let me console log, let me just comment it out these things and commented out this and console log props. Now we have two things in props, right? We have age and the full name. So what we can do is full name and age. So now we will have just one variable here and one variable there, right? Ooh, cannot destructure full name.
Sorry, I missed that. So how did you only get full name and age in your props?
Because I'm passing full name prop, right? Can you see?
So the prop is actually coming from the app.js.
Yes. Yeah. So it comes from where you use your component, because we can have different places where I will use my user card. Imagine that we have, I don't know, 10 pages on the website, and we use user component in different places because we want to have the same style of the card.
Yes.
Yeah. So the only thing, oh right, sorry, we don't have user anymore. So now you can see that we have full name and the age. We still do the same stuff. Let me maybe open side by side so we can see both. Hopefully that will be more clear. So we're passing age and key and full name, and we are receiving basically here, right? So a bit shorter syntax, again, this is pure JavaScript. Remember that you can destructure your props, and what you can do is just do this, right? So you're destructuring from props, you're destructuring just two things. Even if I pass more stuff and I don't need it, I can just destructure two things. Imagine that I'm passing like gender. That will be user gender. I'm receiving it, but I don't use it. If I want to have it, I can just do gender. Again, this is just JavaScript. It's not about React. It's just destructuring in JavaScript. Let me just, yeah. So this is how you create a component. And another bit here, again, just to make it more cleaner, we have user, 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 user. Again, we can just destructure, right? We can destructure ID, first name, last name, and age. So now we don't need this, 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 and this. Yeah, I think it's nicer. So we're taking the user, destructuring stuff that we need, and sending this stuff, and here we even combining to full name, and here we just receiving the full name and the age. Yep. Ricardo?
Yes.
How do you find it? Any questions so far? No? Yes?
No question for me, no.
Okay. So the next step is here we're passing like user card, we're passing so to user card we're passing age and full name, etc. So this is what we have here. But besides like a static data like just strings or numbers, you can pass functions. So what you can do is like on click, I want to pass another function, and let's say click handler, right? And I will get my on click here, right? Because we're passing it, so it comes from props. And I want to have on click, I will have on click. Yeah, so this is reserved method. And I'm just have my function. And as you can see, this function on click here representing my function from here. Yeah? Because I'm just passing it through the component and I'm receiving it here. So let's try. If I go back, click on any card, we have click, right? So we have click whenever I click on the any card. And you might ask like why, right? Why? But the point is that here with your on click, you can have your, let's say, local function, click handler, your own click handler, and you will you will call your on click. So here you will pass this on click, and when you click in on the element, let's say you want to have an ID of the user, so you will know which user has been clicked. So let's say that we will pass another prop ID to my component, so I will receive it, right? And when I click, I'm passing ID to onClick function. And as you remember, onClick is this function. So if I'm passing ID, that means that I can receive my ID here, right? Just pure JavaScript. And click, let's say user ID, right? So now,
why do you need on the right hand side to have the in your const user card to have the const the function click handler as a local function? Can you just not do on click ID?
Right, good question. So I will show you. If you do, you're saying basically have this, right?
Yes.
So remember that if you have this in JavaScript, what will happen?
Well, it will we'll just execute the function.
Exactly.
With the ID.
On load. So you're not clicking, you're just rendering, and that will execute immediately without clicking. So if I refresh, save, refresh,
all right,
we're executing all of that, right? just JavaScript. You can prevent this, so on click expects a function. That will be a callback that will be triggered on click. So what you can do this. Just wrap into anonymous function, right? And you don't need this one. You just wrap it into the function. So what your onClick will do, it will take your function, like in parentheses, and add another pair of parentheses to execute your function, right? So this is what will happen behind the scene, basically.
Okay, so if you do that, then yeah, okay, there is a callback, so it won't execute it straight away.
Yeah, it's just an anonymous function. You don't, like a declared anonymous function. So now if I refresh, I don't have anything, but if I start clicking, right, I'm passing data back to the I'm passing back the data back to the app component. Yeah. So I want to show you the state part. Again, we will have the dedicated lessons, but this is like a quick introduction to everything. We have state. So with new React, we have React hooks, and to have state, let me actually, I just want to show you that you're losing data once you re-render this component. And imagine, I'm just quickly thinking about the good example for you to show that we are actually re-rendering component. Okay, yeah, I'll show you the difference in this way. So here, to have state, we want to have use state. This is React hook use state. And then, if you want to use to have some state, you can use state. And the syntax, this is that hook, right, that we just imported. And here, let's say this is a 0 for me. So state, this is your value, and I want to have something like, I don't know, number. And I will have number. So this is the default syntax for the state. So you have the value where you will, the variable for value, and you have the variable to set the value. So every time you want to modify state, you need to use set whatever value you want to set. You can't just say number equals 5. We can't do that. So you see that React's throwing you errors that you can't do that. You can't. This is illegal. This is direct state mutation, which you don't want to do. But if you do set number to 5, save, now, right. Now we are in infinite loop. Remember I said that every time you set a state, it will re-render component. And in our case, I'm setting the state, it will re-render component, hit this line again, re-render component, hit this line again, re-render component. So let's actually set the number every time with the ID. Let's call it selected ID. Selected ID. That might be better. And selected ID. So now we have set selected ID with my ID, right? So let's see what we have here. Refresh. Let's go to the components. And here, now you can see that we have app and 20 components of use card, right? So if you click on app, you will see that we have state 0. right? Because this is our number, 0. If I click on any card, come on, what's going on? Sorry. Oh my gosh. If I click on any card, now it's 2, right? So in my state, it is true. If I click on this one, it is 4, or maybe, I don't know, first one, it is 1. So we're modifying, and we're re-rendering component. I want to show you that if I put my console log just here, re-render. So now, if I click here, we re-rendering component. Every time I'm changing my state, we re-render component, right? Does it make sense?
What's the goal for that? Is that just to be able to identify all the components?
No, you want to store your data when you re-rendering component. Because imagine that we have, I don't know, some const. Let's say let. We have let number equals 5. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then we are changing my number equals to 10. So here, if I console log my number, what do you expect to see?
5.
Yes. And if you re-render component, so it will read here this one, you will console log your 5, then you modify to 10. What you will see?
But then each time you re-render, it should go back to bring back to 5, no?
Exactly. But with state, you will have the new value. You're not losing the data. Even maybe more. Let me just set another state just to show you. Const. Let me just say use state.
So do you mean that for each state you can then save all the all values you want for that state?
Some boolean. I will show you boolean. So you have some boolean, and that will be false by default. And every time I will click, I will set to opposite. Right?
Okay.
So we will, wait a second. I just want to show you the difference. And here, I will put my number, I will set my number to 10. So now, console log with a D and some boolean here. So we have two things. We have 3 things. Sorry, we have 2 things in state, and we have third thing as a regular variable. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So now, refresh. We have 0, false, and 5. So ID 0, false, and 5, which is our number. So now, if I click on any card, I have 3 true and still 5. And again, 1, false, and 5. Right? So we're re-rendering component, but when you use state, you have a new data, it persists, but if you use regular variable, it's not.
Yeah.
This is a difference. And you want to interact with something, right? You want to build some logic, store some data, manipulate it, mutate it, etc. You don't want to lose it every time you re-render a component. That is why you use state. This is how you kind of how your data can persist.
Got it. Well, kind of got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to have your value on the second render, don't use regular variables. Use state. Of course, if you do some, I don't know, some mass const number, and you will have you want to take the ID and multiply 5, I don't know, whatever. And you want to, every time you want to recalculate this number, that's fine, right? Because you want to take the new value and multiply by something. So that should be new all the time. So this one is fine. So now if we have our number, refresh, so we have 0 because 0 multiply 5, 0. Click on this one. Ooh. What's going on? Right, sorry, my bad. We don't have it. Doesn't exist. So 0, full 0. Now 20, right, because it's 4, or 10 because it's 2. So this is valid, like usage of variable just in the component. Okay, let's actually trigger. I want to show you how you can build a logic around that and mutate. Let's add is active to our card. Is active, and if it's active, sorry, if it's active, I want to set background to the card. So here, active, I will add some background color, background color to, I don't know, blue. Oh, that kind of blue, some blue. Let me pick the right one. Some light blue, let's say light blue. Something like that. So I want to conditionally add background to the card, right? So here we have user class, user card class, and here I will pass is active based on, so we don't need this one anymore, on selected ID, right? So if selected ID is card ID, then it's true, right? So basically this will be Boolean, right? It's true or false. So I'm passing is active. And here, oh my goodness, sorry. I will add another, let me close this one. I will add another prop is active. And here, I want to, let's say, allied classes. I want to create a variable. And if it's active, I want to have user card and active, right? Else, I want to have just user card. So we are basically building a string. And then, if I want to use my variable, I just use curlies and allied classes.
Sorry, can you repeat again? So lie active is active, then you have, what's the first, the user card active? Okay, you just want to say, you just want to console log the user card active if it's active and user card if it's not.
Not console log, I just want to have two classes if it's active, or one class.
Sorry, yeah.
So we're toggling classes basically.
Yeah, I got it. And sorry, again on the app.js on line 7, why are we using use state 0?
This is a default one.
That's the default one that you see when you...
Yeah, you can have 5, I don't mind.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah. So if you have 0, that will, I think we don't select any, because in our database we don't have 0 at all. We're starting from 1, yeah. So even better. So now we are here, right? If I click, it's blue, right? If I click on the next one, you're selecting actually stuff.
Because you have built in your CSS that when it's active, it's becoming blue. Or...
Yeah, and we are deciding is it active based on the selected ID which we have here, right? So when you click, you trigger this function which is setting the selected the current card ID to selected ID, and then you comparing the selected ID
with the ID.
With the ID of the specific card when you render, because once you change the state, it will re-render components, so all of these will be re-rendered as well, right? So you're re-rendering all of them. I will show you that console log.
Each time you click, it re-renders, you're saying?
So when I click on one card, I'm changing the state in app, right? Here.
Yeah.
I'm changing the state. And because I'm changing the state, I'm re-rendering this component, the app component, and that will re-render all of these cards because you're regenerating, because you're re-rendering the component. You're regenerating your cards.
That's
right?
powerful. Yeah.
So now, if I just want to show you, you've just card rendered 20 times, see my 20. If I click on any, we have 20 more, and 20 more, and more, and more, and more, right? So regenerating with every click, because once you change the state, it will re-render the whole tree that goes beneath this component. So it re-render the component and the whole tree down, forwards. Yeah, the tree forwards, not upwards. So imagine if you have a few children and the app is not the top component, you have some parents, it will trigger re-render for all the tree forwards, not upwards. It will not change the parent. It will not re-render the parent.
Oh, wow.
So you kind of isolate you're re-rendering part of your application. You're not re-rendering the whole application. Yep.
Yeah, that's quite a step up from what we were doing before.
I mean, you'll find it very easy, to be honest. You will familiarize yourself with the syntax, with the JSX syntax basically, and a few things about state and props, and you'll be fine. You will see that how.
Yeah, no. What I meant is that actually it is. I mean, yeah. For now, I can see I can start to see how efficient this can be. Actually, I was just comparing to the projects we had and how difficult it was to just go from one to the other. And now with this, it looks it looks smoother.
Yeah, because you can write everything in one place, right? You have, okay, I have users, easy, just go through it, render all of them, and do whatever I want. So it's much easier to handle and again, because you have a card, you can just use it in other places. You can just boss it, you can use this user card, you can create some generic one or user card and or whatever name, and reuse it in different places with different configurations, and you can have something. Look at this, for example, here I want to have a gender, just another one. So another P, gender, and here I want to put gender. So I need to pass my gender. So I need to pass gender from here. Gender. And for I need to destructure gender, and gender here, right? So we take in from the users, passing to the child, and rendering there. Great. I definitely. Oh yeah, I forgot to say. Yeah. So we have all genders, but imagine that you have in your database not all users have gender.
Have a gender.
You have missing data. So now what you can do is just check if gender, right, then render. So if it's true C, render the P with gender. So now, as you can see here, we have gender, but here we don't, right? With simple condition.
How did you do that? Just gender and
basically, so this is ternary. This is
okay. Yeah.
If gender, do this.
Yeah.
Again, so how it's much simpler than with JavaScript. You just tweak in tiny bits. And here you basically can do dynamic stuff, right? So you can tailor your card based on props that you're passing. You can have different UIs, you can have render different data, etc. So yeah. Any questions?
No.
No?
That's pretty cool.
See, React is easy, no questions. Yeah, so this I would say that props and state, those two are major concepts in React. So we will cover routing, because now everything is happening in 3000. So even if I imagine that I will create another component, I don't know, let me create component user list, and inside user list I will create another index JS React functional arrow React arrow function function component here user list. So now I can actually outsource, I can refactor my code, right? I can move this inside this component, right? I can actually import, because I don't need to have users on my top level component, I can have it only in my user list component. So the URL will be different, because I need to go one level up, I think, and that will be DB. Or maybe 2 levels up. Yeah, I think like that. 1 second, yeah, like this. And I need this one. So that will be just 1 level up. And I need my state and handler there, because again, I don't need that on my top level, right? Here, all I need to have is my use state. I think this is it. That still should work. The only thing that we are missing here is that we actually want to import the component, import user list from.
But so how do you initialize it if you have nothing in your app?
Yeah, so now all I have is this. Just this, right? One component. It's showing me an error that I need to export it, a default. So const here that will export default user list. Yeah. So we just refactor basically. Let's try. Yeah, still the same. But now I want to show you that here I will put console log app re-render, right? Here I will put user list re-render, and here I will put user card re-render. So if I refresh, I have one app re-render. I've just refreshed the whole page. I have user list re-render, and I have 20 user card re-render, right? So if I click on any card, it's annoying. It's annoying because I want to have when you cursor should be pointer. It's just me. So when you click on any card, we will get re-render for user lists because this is where we have state, and we have re-render 20 times of user card, but we not re-render an app, right? This is because we're not changing anything for app. So this is what I meant when I said that it re-render itself and forwards. Downwards, probably. Forward and downwards. Downwards. Yeah. Because we've changed in state, and that will re-render everything that it has inside. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Sorry. Cool. So here, imagine that we have user list, right? I want to create a navigation, quick navigation, like a nav thing, and I want to have home, and I will render some home component. Let me just have two things, UL, or just two links. Let me put two links. Anchor. We don't have anything, so home, and we will have user list. Yeah, two anchors. So now I want to actually imitate the navigation between two pages. So when we're working with views, by the way, we normally have, besides components, we have folder containers. And containers normally represent the whole view, the whole page. So technically, this one, the list, should be inside containers. I hope that makes sense.
Sorry, what's the container? I know I didn't understand that.
It's just a naming, basically. If you have
okay. So if you have something that contains components, you call it container.
But it's not just contain any component. It's basically about the whole page, the whole view that you will render. Like a home container or about container or product container.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and components is like a building blocks that you will use to build containers. And components still can be a bit complex because you can have something, I don't know, you can have nested items. Like you can have component form, and inside form you will have input component. But so both are components. None of them are like a container because it's not the whole view. It's just a part of some view of some page.
Got it.
Okay, so now we have two pages, right? We have home and we have user list. Let me. All I want to do is add state and swap between. Let me create actually home and I will create JS. Function component home. Default, and I have home. So I will just put I don't know, H1, nothing smart, comma, okay, H1, home page, yep. And here I will import it home. So I have my home, and I want to render my home here. So now you can see that I have home and user list, right? Let's change the order. So home and I want to swap them. I want to show one or another, and you can do that by const active page. Let me actually add our state. So use state and use state. We will have active page. And for example, active page by default will be home, because this is where you normally land. And here you can have something like if equals home render home, right?
Wow, okay.
Another one, active page equals user list, user list render this one. So for now we have just home, right? We have no logic behind. We need to have some clicks. We need to do some, basically handle those stuff. So on click, we will have something like chain.
So
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Could you say yeah? I was just gonna ask why is it home? Is because you use state home, so it's the default page is home. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I will create change view handler function where I will pass the event. This is the whole element. And for this element, for anchor, I will add something like data attribute. I will add attribute data, I don't know, view, and I will call it, this is HTML tag attribute, right? Just here I will call it home or user page, user list, right? So now in my event, const view will be event target dot view dataset dot view. Again, this is JavaScript, and then I will just set my view here, right? This is all I'm doing. So now we're landing on home page. If I click on user list, I'm rendering the user list. If I click home, I'm rendering home. You probably can make it slightly nicer. Let me just open the app here. We have navigation anchor. It's super messy, but I just want to make a bit nicer. So I don't know, margin. So display inline block. This is the first bit. Next thing is margin 0, I don't know, 20 pixels, left and right, and color blue. And when I hover, I can have color green. Yeah. Cursor So now, yeah, I can click and I can navigate between pages, technically, right? But
can you show again the code on the, not this one, the
not
I'm just trying
CSS.
Sorry?
Not CSS. You're not interested in CSS.
Yeah, I was just looking into where. Okay, so on click you execute the change view handler, and the change view handler. Okay, so that's first active page is changing.
Yeah.
To whatever is on what you click.
Yeah.
And when you set active page, then it just exactly when it's home and you show home.
Yeah.
And okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs a bit of a mental kind of gymnastic, but I got it.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So and see that you created navigation and you have 2 pages already. But the problem with React is that, but just default React, I would say, that you still stay on 3000. You're not actually navigating to something like users, right? And if you try to go to something like users, hit enter, you're still landing on the original page because it doesn't know what is routing. And we have the solution for that. But we have a lesson for that as well. But yeah, so you can imitate. That is why you might find that people calling React applications or Angular or Vue single page application, because you actually stay on one page. You're not going to another page. So you mimicking and emulating like a behavior as multiple pages, but you actually don't. You stay on the same place. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that probably right. Let me just cover the CSS quickly because CSS is messy. So the problem with CSS, when your application start growing, you will have a lot of CSS files. And you will get to the point when it will start clashing. Imagine that in our app.js, in my CSS, let me just open stylings that we have for user card. And I will change in my app CSS, accidentally, I have similar class. I will set background color to, I don't know, pink by default. And now it overwrites all my cards, right? Which is wrong, because if you have a lot of components, you have a huge application, you definitely will hit this problem and it will clash your CSS. We have a solution for that. And the name to it is CSS modules. So CSS module here, you can see that we have classes user card and all of them, right? So this is global class. But with CSS modules, you can actually have unique classes, because CSS modules, they do adding prefixes to each on component level. So if you have user card in this component, you will have unique class for this component. And if you have not on the same in the same class for another component, it will add unique class to the same. Basically, it will add unique prefix to your class, and you will basically have a different class. So what I mean is here, all you need to do is basically just let me just quickly, did they add it or not? CSS modules, because I don't remember, is it a part of Create React App or not? I think it should be. Where is it? Let me just React. Oh yeah, it is a part. Beautiful. It is a part of CSS modules. So this project supports CSS module alongside. Perfect. So all you need to do is just add dot module to the file name. So now this is the first step. Now where you importing your stylings, user card, right? You want to have dot module, and now you want to import it as a variable, as a regular variable. And here, now you need these classes as a variables, as JavaScript variables, dot user card and styles dot active, right? So we probably need to rename our card to capital user card because JavaScript doesn't recognize hyphens. Yes, Ricardo. Today's intro, we will have dedicated lessons for each. That I'm just showing you examples so you can start playing and you will have more questions when we will have dedicated lessons for that. So this one. So now you have unique classes, and let me show you. So if I refresh, go to users, see that we have a prefix that basically takes the class, the component name, and adds some unique salt, let's say, to the class name. So this is how it works. And now it's not clashing, right? It has user card, active, and the unique salt.
Can you show again the code, the
So what you need to remember is first, add module, so you have name.module.css, and then when you want to use it, you import as variable, as styles. Normally we call it styles, you can call it kitten, of course, but yeah, it's just a variable from your CSS, and then all your classes comes from styles dot and your class name, styles dot and your class name. This is it.
And that gives then a unique attribute to each of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
On level, on component level.
Name, rather.
On component level. So you can see that this is the same component. That is why all of them, they have the same class, right?
And just by typing modules, it kind of recognizes it as a
as a module.
Or?
As a module.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to import anything. It's kind of part of React.
Yeah, exactly. This is a part of configuration of Create React App.
Wow.
So yeah, I think that we probably covered all main things for React. And I will deploy exercises today, and I strongly recommend you to start playing with them as soon as possible, because on Wednesday we will have props lesson, and we will do more with props. I will repeat myself in a few parts, a few things I will repeat them, but yeah, it would be nice if you start playing, you will have more questions, because you will stuck on something, and yeah, you'll basically, we can have meaningful discussion during the lesson. Yeah. Sorry, any questions?
No, it's quite exciting.
I hope so. Let me just double. Yeah. So. Oh no. So on Wednesday we will have state. Next week we will have props. And then then we will have another lesson where we will have a code alone. We will build to do app. So we will have like state and props all together, and we will just build together. So basically then we will talk about fetching data, about more about hooks, and yeah, I think then routing and Redux. Yeah. So that is, as I said, we covered probably like 80% of the most important stuff in React. So state, props, and CSS scoping are what we actually need to start building applications.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, if you don't have any questions, then I will see you. Thomas is still struggling with his internet because he moved to the new place and he doesn't have the internet there.
All right. So we only have the video listed on the 18th of January.
Okay, see you. I'm hoping that whatever you push as for the exercise, we will probably get like exact instructions on what needs to be done, because today was like overwhelming, like all together. So hopefully we should be able to follow the instructions.
Yeah,
in the
that's what I'm
exercise.
saying. Today was just an overview to everything to cover all like concepts, and we will
Alright.
have dedicated lessons for each concept that we mentioned today.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.